We welcome you. We're going to go through the presentation, but if you have any questions along the way, there's a question and answers Q&A section that you can post a question that we can try to answer throughout the webinar, or at the end, we'll have a question and answers section that we hope we provide a wealth of information to you today. We're going to have our team of financial advisors presenting. So I'll first introduce myself and then kick it off for other advisors to introduce themselves to start off. So my name is Jennifer Myers. I'm the president of Sage Vest Wealth Management, and I'm fortunate to have a great team working with us. So I will transfer it over to Ryan Albritton to introduce himself and then the rest of our team.
Hey everybody, Ryan Albritton here. I'm a certified financial planner and advisor here with SageVest. I want to welcome you as Jennifer did and look forward to the presentation today. And I'll pass it off to Anthony Matteo here.
Thanks, Ryan. My name is Anthony Matteo. I'm also a certified financial planner and financial advisor here at SageVest Wealth Management. We thank everyone for joining us and hope you take something from today's webinar. I'm going to pass it over to Dan Serra.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Dan Serra, Senior Financial Advisor here at SageVest and also a certified financial planner. We hope you get a lot of good information out of today's webinar. So I'm going to click it back to Jennifer to get started.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And you'll see all of us throughout today's presentation. So I'll kick us off by just giving you a brief introduction to our firm. We are a wealth management firm, which means that we help individuals with the totality of their finances, including their investments, financial planning, and everything under that umbrella. We proudly serve as a fee-only and fiduciary firm, which means that we always act in the best interest of our clients. We have a robust team as you've just met. And our ultimate goal is to help our clients make wise financial decisions in support of their current goals, their long-term goals, their family, etc. So we have put together an accumulating wealth section as a resource on our website, and that's really what today's webinar is to introduce and to offer some insights and helping you and perhaps some family members to get started. So I'll move forward to what we're going to be talking about today in the presentation. We'll kick off by really trying to explain why planning does matter, why it's important to start planning in advance of when your goals come about. That if hopefully a important goal, but not your only goal, is retirement, and it's important to plan for that early, not the year before you plan to retire, for example. With that, how to get started, because sometimes planning can be intimidating. So giving you ideas and suggestions to start laying the path forward. This is somewhat prompted by us putting together a resource center. So we want to introduce the resource center that we've developed. I'll add that this is really geared for individuals ranging really from their 20s to their 50s, because typically it takes a while to accumulate wealth. It's not just when you're getting started, it's over a number of decades for most people. And I'll also add that we have this resource center available on our website, but we also have other resources, including hundreds of articles on our blog in support of helping others. And then finally, knowing when you do need help, that if financial planning and accumulating wealth is more than you're willing or able to put on your shoulders, knowing when to reach out and seek advice. So I'll just start off by explaining what some of our goals were in putting this together. We do have a firm belief in everyone achieving financial security. We work with clients, and that's distinctly our goal in helping them. But whether you're working with a financial advisor or not, we believe that everyone should have that ability and comfort in life. We would like to help spark some new ideas in terms of why planning is important. Too often people just focus on retirement planning, that's their only financial planning goal and what they need to be, putting their efforts toward. But there's a lot more involved in financial planning and putting your financial house in order, which we'll get into in more detail, and Anthony will talk about in greater detail. With that, there are oftentimes many overlooked financial matters. A great example is tax planning. And too often you look in the back of your mirror and realize, oh, I wish I coulda, shoulda, about doing something to help reduce your taxes in the prior year. So being proactive and not overlooking potential opportunities helps you to seize the day and put yourself in a better place for tomorrow. And then, as I mentioned, sometimes people do not have a financial advisor. One of the questions that we are rightfully asked is, you serve as a wealth manager, and it's wonderful that you help individuals that have accumulated wealth, but how does one get there in having enough wealth to be able and be ready to hire a wealth manager? And it's a very valid question. So that's part of the reason why we put this together, to help the public and our community be able to achieve that goal. And then we also have recognized in conversations with clients over the years that clients that have adult children frequently have difficulty or question how to broach a financial topic without having an invasive conversation or feeling like they're preaching to their adult child. And part of what this resource center does is it offers a resource to parents that, for example, if somebody is welcoming a new child, they don't need to tell their child all of the things they need to think about. It can be an easy discussion of, our financial advisor or, this website that we're aware of has some resources, and, here's an article you might want to look at. And they have the tools, they have the knowledge, and you don't have to be the person to impart that. So I'll just kick off by showing you that if you do want to take a look at the Resource Center, which we encourage you to do, where to find it, it's on our website, which is sagevestwealth.com. And under the tab of News and Insights, we have a number of different resources and articles, but we do have a dedicated Resource Center with a drop down of 3 resource centers that we offer. Those include really all stages of life, from retirement and things that you need to know entering and enjoying retirement, to the prior years of today's topic of accumulating your wealth so that you can get to that joyous day when you enter retirement, and spanning a number of decades, as we talked. And we also have a kids financial literacy website, because we understand that there's a lot involved in learning about money. It doesn't just happen overnight as your child is leaving the house at age 18 or what have you. And that your foundation that you build when you're younger really affects the way you approach money later in life. So we have an abundance of information for you, for your family. And I will kick it over to Ryan to talk about why planning matters to get us started.
Perfect. Thanks, Jennifer. And as she mentioned there, why planning matters, and it is critically important. And want to just share some facts, some stats here that you may find surprising, but I think they're important to know. 14% of Americans max their retirement plans, which for a lot of people is their primary way of saving. 46% of adults have a will as an essential estate planning document. Critically important that be a higher percentage. A will is, again, a legal document. It helps you to coordinate your wishes, distribution of assets post-death. And for those of you with children, can also help you in appointing legal guardians in the unfortunate event of death. 106 million adults lack adequate life insurance coverage, which is again, it's important to have adequate coverage, especially for those that are married, those that have families, to help support in the unfortunate event of death. 68% of Americans worry about covering 1 month's expenses. That's shocking. 37% of divorces are caused by financial issues, and 65% of Americans identify money as the root cause of their stress. And it's interesting to think that stat, the 65% of Americans identifying money as the root cause of stress, transitions really well into the next slide. And again, why planning is so important. So finding time and focus, again, as I mentioned, the stress aspect, it's interesting that people, and we compared here vacation planning to retirement planning, but before I jump into that, I want to share a quote by Richard Thaler, who's a very well-known, well-recognized behavioral economist, and really a thought leader in the field. People succumb to short-term temptations, which is why many people fail to save for old age. Which really, people are looking at the short term, looking at the here and now, rather than what's coming down the road. So looking at vacation planning, average person spends 1.5 weeks on vacation. So 1.5 weeks on vacation, and they spend 4 hours planning said vacation. Whereas if we look at retirement planning, the average person spends 19 years in retirement, but less than an hour on actually planning for retirement. So again, that's really a shocking stat there, that it is the #1 stress of people, 68% of people, yet they don't actually do anything about it. And that's one of the things that's just critically important, is actually taking action, taking control, and making it a part of your life. So recognizing life isn't static. This is something we constantly are talking to people about, is that there are changes in life. Here's some common changes in life. And as these changes occur, and others, it's important that your planning is intertwined and working with those changes. So you may have a job change. Let's say that, benefits packet changes. You want to take those things into consideration in your financial planning picture. Income. Your income may increase over the life of your career, increasing savings, for instance, as your income increases, so you don't have lifestyle creep and you're not just letting that additional income flow back into your lifestyle. Family changes. You may, be having children. You may have children that are going off to college, considering these factors in the planning. Lifestyle. So obviously your lifestyle will change as you age along the way. It's important to take that into consideration. Healthcare, or health, your health may diminish as you get older. Taking that into account and planning for those potential eventualities is important. Taxes, we're not getting away from them. So as Jennifer mentioned earlier, it's critical to be proactive, look at your tax situation and plan accordingly. And then looking at your investments, your investments may change when you're 25 versus 55. It's important that you're constantly reevaluating and making sure that your investments match your goals, your needs, and what you're going to need long term. And with that, I'll wrap up this section here and pass it along to Anthony.
Thanks, Ryan. It was a very good overview of why planning matters. And now I'm going to talk about getting started. There's a lot to know about planning, financial management. And a lot of times, one of the largest hindrances in achieving success is the actual getting started part of it. A lot of times people look at their finances and they feel like it's almost a disjointed mess. And there are so many different things that they have to take into consideration and feel that they need to touch on to achieve that success. And it's tough to do. So what we want to talk about is that, all different segments of your finances, you can take a look at it in a comprehensive mindset. And each piece of the puzzle fits to create a great foundation. There are a number of different aspects of your finances, and by getting started and interconnecting all of the different aspects, you'll find it easier to achieve that success that you're looking for. This chart here, I'm going to walk everyone through it. The main takeaway is that it's important to not only start early, but to be consistent in your savings. So what this chart looks at is it looks at four different types of savers. And I'm going to describe them by the color. So if you start at the bottom, you have the green consistent saver. So what this saver does is they save $200 a month for 40 years, starting at age 25 until age 65. So they did one thing great. They started early. They started at 25. They did another thing very well. They were consistent in their saving. The one thing that they didn't do was invest their savings. This consistent saver, the green saver, basically puts their $200 a month under the mattress, keeps it in cash. This chart assumes that they receive about a 2% annual return, and at age 65, they have about $158,000. We look at the next saver, the gray saver, the early saver, and the investor. So the early saver starts early. Great job. They start at age 25, and they save that $200 a month for 10 years until age 35. They also invest all these funds, and they earn on average 7% return. So the issue here is that they stop saving at age 35. You'll see that at the end, at age 65, the gray saver has a little over $270,000. We then look at the late saver, the purple saver, late saver and investor. So they begin saving $200 a month from age 35 to age 65. They invest their savings and earn about 7% return on an annual basis. And at age 65, they have about $242,000. So while they may have started late, they were consistent and invested their savings. The last saver, the blue saver, is not only consistent, but they also invest their funds. This saver saves that $200 a month, starts early at age 25, and is consistent with it until age 65. They earn 7% return, and at the end, they have over $512,000. The main takeaway is that not only is it important to start early, it's important to be consistent, and it's important to invest your monies into the market. I want to take a second and make two important notes. For purposes of this chart and this presentation, this looks at a saver who invests $2,200 per month annually throughout their life. That may not be realistic. It's important that if your income rises, that you start capturing more additional savings. So if you're saving $200 when you're making $75,000 a year, well, when you get that raise or a couple years out and you're making $100,000 or $125,000, it's important to capture additional savings. It's also important to note that while the best case scenario is that you start early and you're starting at that 21, 25 early time frame in your life, it's never too late to start. If you're sitting here on today's webinar and you haven't started, no matter what age you are, it's important to start. You may need to save additional amounts and more than the 25-year-old does. But again, the main takeaway is it's never too late. And that gets us to the conversation of where do you begin? You take a look at your finances, you say, I want to get started, but you're looking at that disjointed mess that we had on the first slide, and you're confused on where to begin. One of the most important pieces of the puzzle is to define your goals. And as Jennifer and Ryan touched on, retirement planning isn't the only goal. That's likely everyone's long-term goal, but there's other short-term goals, midterm goals that are likely on your horizon, whether it's paying down credit card debt, saving for an emergency fund, saving for a down payment on your first home, saving for a down payment on your second home. There are a number of different goals that you likely will have that you'll hope to achieve. It's important then to develop a plan to achieve these goals, right? Once you know what your objectives are, what the goals that you want to achieve are, you have to develop a plan to get there. A lot of times you write your goals down and you know what you want to do, but you don't know how to do it. Developing a plan is important to get there. Once you develop that plan, it's important to not only become diligent, but to make wise decisions along the way. Sticking to the plan, that becoming diligent is important. If you want to, save for that home down payment and you are, put a number out there, $500 a month, that's what I'm going to save. Be diligent, get it done. It's important to stay on that path. And then the making the wise decisions, along that path, you're going to have different financial decisions that come about. Things change. It's important to take a step back and make the right decision. And if you don't know what the right decision is, then it's important to, look for that advice, find that advice, have the conversations, and take the correct step forward. It's also important to always evaluate your progress, right? A lot of times these goals are years into the future, and things may feel static on the path towards those goals. Evaluating where you're at, how far you have to go is important. And a lot of times you'll get that positive reinforcement. You'll feel better about what you're doing. And in turn, it'll make it easier to get there. And then it's important to revisit your goals. It's important to not only revisit your goals, but also revisit your plan. As Ryan mentioned, things change. Life's not static. Whether you're changing jobs, you're growing your family, it's important not to do, a one-time plan and throw it in the drawer. Reevaluating and making the changes that need to be made, if they do, is of utmost importance.
So with that, I'll come back on and sort of launch us into an overview of some of the different elements of the Accumulating Wealth Resource Center that we've put together. As I mentioned, there's a lot of a plethora of information on our website, but this gets into the particular key areas that really sort of constitute the topics of accumulating wealth. We kick off with just basically having the broad discussion of why is financial planning? What is it? And really getting to the essence of what is important. This does not cover everything. As you see, we have 6 different topics here of basic general financial planning, employment, housing, marriage and family, savings, and asset protection. It's not the totality of what needs to be involved in your financial planning, but we try to get to the crux of the key elements. And if you're not sure where to really start or what's important beyond, as we mentioned, sort of the key element that people think about of retirement planning, we hope that some of these topics help to, as we mentioned, spark thought on those topics. And one of the topics that we have under this section is just a quick and easy checklist of things that you should be looking at in your financial plan that, as Anthony mentioned and going through, there's a lot to know, and it gives just a quick starting point of things to be thinking about. So I'll move forward to employment. For most of us, unless you have inherited a significant amount of money, your savings from your employment really are how you get to accumulating wealth. So it's important to look at the structure of your employment, the growth of your career. We just actually hosted a webinar that talked about advancing your career. so that you don't stay stagnant. If your goal, I should say, is to advance your career, and giving advice on how to get there and without burning out along the way. So a lot of people sometimes say, well, hey, I'm going to get a higher base salary. So that's great. I should take the job. But it's not always just about your base salary. There's a lot of things to think about, your benefits that you're going to receive, your bonus structure, protecting your family with health insurance. So how this position is going to help you advance your career and the stepping stones to where you ultimately want to be. And then a lot of other questions of what is the best retirement plan to meet your goals, whether it's, a Roth 401k, a traditional 401k. And, if you're leaving a job, what do you need to think about in advance? In terms of leaving a 401k behind, making sure that your family and you are protected for the next stage. So we then move on to housing. Ultimately, for most people, when you think about if you own a home, what is the largest asset in your life? It's typically your house, unless you're very, very wealthy, or unless you put most of all of your savings in one particular asset, which we never recommend. So there's a lot, whether you're starting off, as Anthony mentioned, and looking at buying your first home and deciding if it's better to rent or buy. That's a big decision in today's housing market where prices have skyrocketed, mortgage rates are high. Making that wise decision and thinking about how long you're going to be there, whether you might be relocating for a job, or maybe you started working remotely and now they're calling you back into the office. There's a lot of things to consider. And then if you are thinking about moving, what are some of the tax ramifications? As Anthony mentioned, whether it's buying a second home, which we saw probably more people in the past 2 years than in my 20-some years of experience buying second homes. So it's very much out there these days. It's really important, obviously, to focus on your goals and reaching your goals. But for those of us who have a family, whether you're married, whether you have children, both, what have you, even for your parents or extended family, your financial decision-making should look at the totality of those that you love. And that can be a range of things, from if you're getting married, making sure that you're on that right path. As Ryan mentioned, over 60% of Americans stress about money. That can really have an impact on a marriage. So getting on the right path at the beginning, talking about your goals, can really help to put you on, a healthy path to a relationship. Obviously, if you become a parent, one of the biggest changes in life that you'll have. It brings immense joy, but it also brings some significant financial decisions along the way, whether it be, saving for college or protecting your family along the way. That includes having documents that help to protect them, as an example. As we mentioned, savings, planning for retirement is a key element to accumulating wealth. It's not the only one, but it is very important. There's a lot from the very beginning that we talked about in terms of getting started, whether it's building an emergency fund. As Ryan mentioned, sadly, most people don't have enough to get through 1 month of expenses if they don't have adequate savings, which is not a good position for people to be in terms of achieving their life goals and ultimate financial security. It's whether or not you're on track for retirement, if you're choosing the right dollar amount to save, if you're choosing the right account in terms of achieving those objectives. So for example, one of the things that we really work on with clients is a lot of times it's not just putting money in your 401k. Sometimes that doesn't allow for how much you ultimately need to be saving. And sometimes it puts you in a difficult situation long-term, tax-wise, where you want to look at your structure of savings relative to long-term and your ability to source funds without paying a heavy load in taxes. And then as our final, but ultimately not final segment here, but looking at the sixth category that we have on the accumulating resource center is protecting your wealth. If you're building your wealth, you put a lot of effort into it, as I mentioned, unless you were fortunate enough to receive a significant inheritance. So if you've put this work into it, you want to make sure that it's protected for you and for those you love again. Insurance is the first topic that probably comes to mind, and it's important in making sure that you have the protection mechanisms for yourself, for those that you love. But insurance isn't the only thing. I'll also add that Dan's going to talk us through when to know when you need help, including what type of advisor. We serve as a fee-only advisory group, which many advisory firms do. The benefit to that is when you're looking at insurance, you know that the advisor who's giving you recommendations does not sell insurance, so that you're getting quality advice that you can trust in terms of how much you need, what you need, and what is the best way of obtaining the coverage that you need. But protecting your wealth goes far deeper than just having insurance. It can be when you're getting married, and maybe you've already accumulated a meaningful amount of wealth, and protecting that. Hopefully you don't have a divorce situation, but if you do, as I mentioned before, I'll go back and touch upon planning documents, that some of the things that you need to do to protect your wealth for you and those you love is having proper structure of how your retirement assets will flow. And we talked about this earlier in the year in another webinar, that there have been some significant changes in how IRA assets can pass to whomever you select to receive that portion of your inheritance. And a lot of documents need to be revised to make that the most beneficial structure for those individuals who are receiving retirement assets. Another big one that for parents of adult children that we said is part of why this resource center is created is we'll often talk about maybe putting assets in trust to protect your adult children in the case that they do get divorced. And then just very basic things. We have banking topics in the news today, and wanting to make sure that your assets are FDIC insured if that is applicable. So there's a wealth of information on this resource center. We invite you to take a look at it, as well as many other articles that we have under our blog. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dan Sarah to talk us through, when this might be too much to put on your shoulders and when you might need help.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, there's a lot of information here, as you've seen. And for a lot of people, it can be quite overwhelming, or just the time is not available really to dig into it. So for those of you who know you need some help, and if you don't know you need some help, there are some things you can see here to help you know. So for example, if you don't know your goals, it's a good time to sit back and evaluate those and decide, where do I start? Am I on that solid financial path to get where I want to get to, especially in retirement and as a working person? And if you just find some of these topics confusing or not sure of your decisions, that's where our job comes in, and to get some professional advice on that. So it's a good time to know that, I do need help. I want some help with this because I'm not sure. And obviously the decisions you make, may affect other decisions you want to make. So having someone to help you make those decisions is very important. And of course, investing, one of the more complicated things of knowing, what you're investing in, and are you investing in the right thing? Is it right for me? Having that help available to you can really help you decipher where you should start investing. So when you need help, there are a number of ways you can get it. And you see here, there's 3 options I'll explain. It's sort of like getting from point A to point B. There are a number of ways to do that. So for example, a robo-advisor is someone who's usually a firm, and it's going to be an automated system. They use algorithms, and they'll have their system to invest your money. I look at these three options as sort of like getting from point A to B in a car. The robo-advisor is like that self-driving car. You're just going to sit there and let it take over. The hourly service is where you're a passenger in that car and an advisor is driving. I'm sorry, you're the driver and the advisor is the passenger. You're being proactive, you're doing everything, but you have sort of that backseat driver to help you. They typically work in an hourly service. If you need the help, you can ask for it, and they'll provide that on an hourly basis. The final one is ongoing financial advice, and that's where the advisor is driving and you're the passenger. They're steering to where you want to get to your destination. You're there to see what they're doing, and they're there to ask you questions. So it really gives you the more comprehensive approach, where they're looking at your investments, they're looking at your financial planning, all of these topics we just went through. They're trying to integrate and make sure they fit you and that you get to your destination. Next.
Dan, I'll just laugh. We're chauffeurs.
Yeah, that's right. So not only are there different types of advisors you saw there that you can use, they all operate in different ways. So as Jennifer mentioned earlier before, the fee only, that is where they're a fiduciary and their only compensation is what you pay in fee, versus a commission-based advisor where they may charge a fee, but when they put you in an investment or other financial product, they may be receiving a commission from that. So it's important to know, what type of advisor you're working with. And then there's large firms, and then there's independent firms. The large brokerage firms, they tend to have more layers, like a corporation would have different layers, versus an independent firm where you usually know who you're working with at all times, and you have that smaller team on your side. So it can, and there also may not be held to any restrictions they have for like the type of investments they can buy for you. So they're more, just like it says, independent, free to go anywhere they want to, and look for all the different types of resources and solutions for you. And then there's the suitability standard versus fiduciary. As I mentioned, fiduciary often goes with fee only, and that definition tends to be they're doing the decision in your best interest. They're looking out for you, versus a suitability where they're saying this investment is suitable for you. You fit the profile basically, versus being the fiduciary. It may not be in your best interest, but it's suitable for you. Now, language is complicated and detailed, so you want to make sure you understand both of those when you're talking to an advisor. And also important in an advisor is the knowledge that they have and how much work they've done. The quality work equals quality advice, as we see here. So, an experienced advisor has probably gone through a lot that you're going to go through or have gone through, and they can be there by your side. They've gone through different types of scenarios, and they can help you relate to what their experience has been over the years. And also, when you're working with that advisor, being accurate is important by providing accurate information, because if you give that good information, they can give you good, even better advice. So it's important that you have the advisor with knowledge and that you're working with accurate numbers that you can provide to the advisor. And finally, just remember, a lot of this can be frustrating and a lot of us throw our hands up, but it's part of the process. The good news is there are some things to remember here that you can control your spending and saving. Some people think this is out of my control. I can't do this, but yeah, you can control how much you spend and how much you save. And a lot of what you do is influenced by your behavior. So having that positive attitude and being optimistic, knowing that accumulation is not something that happens overnight, it takes time. Just like we learned earlier that, we're focused too much on the short term nowadays, that we need to start taking more of a longer term. So understand that, there's going to be some ups and downs. The average person goes through 8 recessions. So there are going to be periods where, things aren't looking very good for you out there, but knowing that that's part of the process. The long-term success requires you to go through those down periods as much as the up periods. And finally, the biggest thing, just avoiding this and not doing anything, that's your biggest enemy. So you need to stay proactive, whether you learn the stuff through our resources or you hire an advisor to help you. Being proactive is going to be your friend here, and don't let the inertia keep you from moving ahead. So we're going to wrap up today with any questions we have. I hope this has all been helpful. Like I said, a lot of resources are here for you, and we're here for you, and a lot of things we can help with. So if you have any questions, we can start now. I think I'm going to throw it back to Kathy in our office to let us know if there's any questions.
We do have a couple of questions. The first one is, how do you plan if your goals change every year?
So that's a great question. And as Ryan mentioned, that's part of life. I don't think anyone listening to this webinar can say that the goals that they had in their 20s are the goals that they had in their 40s, or whether you're still in your 20s, that the goals you had last year are the same perhaps that you have this year. It's why, as Dan mentioned, you can't just put this on a placeholder. You can't have inertia in looking back to your planning. And as Anthony mentioned, reevaluating, going back, that you put a plan together, staying on top of your planning and revisiting helps you to know, just like when you're on a road trip, how do you need to redirect and detour if there's construction on the site? That you have to stay on top of it, and there are ways to navigate, but you need to be proactive in doing so.
And if you don't mind me just adding something there, I think it's critical to just remember too, you don't want to just drive blindly. So having those things that you're reaching for, that you're shooting for, is important, and really goes back to why the planning is so critically important.
Okay, I've got another question for you. With spending seeming hard to manage, how do I find money to save? Is there a guide on how much I should save?
So inflation is high right now, and it is more difficult for many to save. So I would make a few recommendations. Again, I don't mean to harp on this, but having a plan and helping you to know how much you need to save, number one. It's the most common question that we get is how much do you need to save? And it's different for everyone. But knowing that goal, and then sometimes, just like most of our clients, almost every person out there, whether it's financial or other, faces trade-offs. And sometimes it's looking at what you need to do in terms of a trade-off right now. And then also one thing that we're looking at with clients is, in the planning, is what if inflation is persistently higher than where it's been, or temporarily higher? And we're certainly hoping that it's temporarily higher. But we don't know. And then sometimes it's not inflation. Sometimes it's just, you have a family matter, you have a large expense on your car, and how does that sort of derail you? And making sure that you have buffers in your financial plan to account for those. So there's a number of things to look at. Whether it be something persistent like inflation, or something that's just popped up, because again, that is part of life.
And I would add, once you know that you're spending and saving, what you need to save, that you just consider saving part of your spending. You're just putting it into a IRA or a 401k. So you're redirecting that as like an automatic payment every month into your account. So it really helps if you can automate those savings, because that way you don't have to think about, where am I going to get the money? It's already set up to go out every month.
Okay, what's a ballpark of how much someone needs to retire today?
That's my favorite question. I'm telling you, every time I tell somebody I'm a financial advisor, at least 50% of the time I get that question. And what I can tell you is there's no universal answer. We have clients that can live off of a few thousand a month, and we have clients that need, a multiple of that. And clearly, how much they need to save is dependent upon how much they need to live. I will say it's really important for people to remember that as their income goes up, unless they are extremely diligent in saving a very large portion of that, the amount that you need to save does creep up. And particularly with high earners, because of the fact that Social Security, that your contributions into Social Security peter out at a certain amount. So if you're earning several $100,000, you don't get the same income replacement, the percentage wise, as somebody with a lower income level, that they're getting a higher percentage replacement from Social Security. So sorry for not a precise answer, but there is no precise answer to that. And again, the importance of planning to know.
Okay, the last question that I have here is, how do you get started if you and your spouse don't see eye to eye on money and one spouse doesn't want to participate?
So I'll just chime in here again that as Ryan talked about, it's not uncommon. We see it frequently. It's a cause, money is a cause of stress, and it impacts a lot of marriages. Whether it's how to raise a child or how to save for retirement or what kind of home you want to buy, typically two spouses do have differing opinions. We often find that working with a financial advisor helps to bring two spouses together, because we can help to facilitate the discussion of starting off with, what are your goals and where can we find commonality in your goals to help you create a unified path in getting there. We also do believe it's important for both spouses to participate versus one just driving the ship, because it puts a lot of stress on one, and sometimes just explaining that. And, sometimes what you need to do in a relationship is, present the ask. Don't assume, but present the ask and explain why you're asking, and helping your spouse to understand, it's going to help you, it's going to help the relationship. Maybe you don't have to do the heavy lift, but at least come to the table.
That plan is your power tool, just like the instructions are to anything you have to put together. So it's hard to put something together without instructions, and your plan outlines, the processes and what you need to do to really help both of you come together with your finances.
Yeah, and I think, as Jennifer mentioned, it's just important to have those discussions. And whether it's a situation where you can't, or you don't feel like you're capable of having those discussions directly with each other, and you need an advisor to facilitate those discussions, the last thing you want to do is just kick the can down the road because you are avoiding it and don't want to deal with it.
Any other questions, Kathy?
That is all that we have.
Okay. Well, I want to thank the team here for going over a lot of topics. I hope we've provided some insightful information and that you'll visit the resource center. I also want to let everyone know that we're having another webinar coming up, whether you're watching this live or want to watch it on replay from the website, that discusses the topic of starting your own business. Because a lot of times people, think, rightfully so, many times, but not always, that branching on your own and starting a business can be one of the great steps to accumulating wealth, and really what you need to know before taking that big step. So I want to thank you again for everyone who joined us today or who's watching on replay. And please feel free to contact us if you have any questions. Thank you.